Hello there everyone, this is Brother Birch. In this video we will be looking at the text editor Visual Studio Code, which is an incredible program, and we're going to download, install, and I'll show you a couple of things that you can do with it. So go to your browser and just say download Visual Studio Code. This is different than Visual Studio if you're curious, but it's made by the same folks. All right, so whichever operating system you have, just go ahead and click on that download button there, and then just go through the install process. Just all the default things that it has set up there in the install process are just fine if you want to leave those the way that they are. And then once you open up the program, it'll look something like this. Might not look it probably won't look exactly the same. I changed my preferences here. In the color theme, you'll probably see something like this, like a dark blue. But anyways, let's go ahead. So there's a couple of different things that I want to show you. Okay, so first of all, whatever class you're going to be using Visual Studio Code for, um, in your files, have a folder for that class or a folder for those programs, and then open up a folder in Visual Studio Code where you're going to house all of your programs. Okay, so just now I did that by saying File, Open Folder, and then I have a folder for all of my CIT 160 programs. Okay, and then I can just come over here, um, and I can see all these programs, and it's really easy to kind of to navigate all these different files. Okay, so that's really helpful. All right, anytime you're using something like Git, Visual Studio Code has a lot of different things that can integrate Git really well. You can see this says M right here. It just means that that was modified. It says I modified it a few seconds ago. I have uncommitted changes, so that's really nice that that shows up there. But there's a bunch of different extensions that you guys can get. So whether you're wanting to use this for a C++ class, a Python class, HTML, CSS, PHP, JavaScript, any of that, there are lots of extensions that you can download for Visual Studio Code. So in your sidebar won't look like this. It'll probably have, I think, 4 things in here. But if you hover over one of them, it'll say extensions. It might have a different icon than this. Um, but there are a bunch of different things that you can install that will help you. Right here, it shows all of the ones that I have enabled in mine. I have Git Link, Heroku CLI, which is for CS313, um, a JavaScript one, a live server one, which is pretty cool. I could right click on this and say open with live server, and then it just opened up this window, and then if I change this here, let's say I'll say my second template program and save it, I just come back here and it automatically refreshed it without me having to do anything. Okay, so simple things like that. I will include in the link a bunch of these different links of ones that I found were very helpful for different classes depending on what you're doing. If you have a Python class, you might want to get one for Python. But if I just searched in here, like let's say I was searching for Python, you can see there's a lot of different extensions that you can install. And all of them, if you click on one of them, will have a rating and how many people have downloaded it. Okay, this one's huge. Okay, I don't think I've ever seen one with 57 million downloads, and it has incredible ratings. Okay, so you might see this and be like, yeah, that might be something that I want. Linting will like check for errors in your code before you actually run it. Debugging will let you step through your code to find errors in it. IntelliSense, while you're typing, it will actually kind of predict or show you different options to complete what you're typing. Code formatting, refactoring, unit test snippets, and more. And there's extensions similar to this for pretty much every programming language. They might not have 57 million downloads, but that's just because Python's awesome. All right, so let's look at a couple here. If I open up this guy over here. All right, so link to install Visual Studio Code, how to install extensions. If you need instructions on how to install extensions, they're right here, but it's pretty easy. We just saw a bunch of extensions. You just hit the install button. And then there's a bunch, for CIT 160 or for a web class like 230 or something like that, I would download this Web Dev Essentials pack, okay, which is where most of my extensions came from. Okay. And then they also have a tutorial on this pack as well. CS 124 had to download Code Runner to be able to execute my code here in this terminal. And if you want to execute C++ code in here, you'll also have to download a C++ compiler. Okay. But then I also had this there, and then here's links for the compiler. And then CS313, like I said, I had Heroku CLI and then a PHP IntelliFence is what it's called. And then Python had a couple, and then others, just a couple of other random things that I have. But this is a list of the ones that I have installed, but depending on what classes you have, if you're going to take a Java class, you might want to, Google search a like good Java extensions that you can use in Visual Studio Code. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to look at real quick is a couple of hotkeys that are extremely helpful in Visual Studio Code. Okay. Let's say I wanted to change the name of this function. I could select it and hit Control D to highlight the next instance of that string that I had selected. And so I could say my new function, and it would change the name in both spots. Okay, which is pretty nice. Same thing with this. If I wanted to change this ID, I could just hit Control D, select the next one. Or let's say I wanted to type here, and down here for whatever reason, I could hold Control, click again, or maybe it's Alt. There, Alt. I can hold Alt, click again, and I can type in both spots. All right. Let's say I wanted to type on each one of these lines. I could hit Control Alt I or Shift Alt I, and it made a cursor on each one of these lines. And I could hit Home to go to the beginning of it and say, um, whatever. But that one's really nice too. In addition to that, I can also click here and hit Shift Alt, and that will just copy that line of code. But if I hit Control Alt and hit my down arrow or my up arrow, then it'll just expand the cursor to those adjacent lines above or below it. And then you can type on those as well. There's a million different hotkeys that you guys can use that are extremely helpful. If you look in preferences and click on keyboard shortcuts, you guys can actually adjust these and change them to anything that you want. And you can see from extensions that I installed, it also kind of brought in its own little set of hotkeys. We can see add cursor above, Control Alt up arrow. I just showed you guys that one. Add cursor to end lines, Shift Alt I just showed you guys that one. Add line comment. So I would look through these. These are really nice. A lot of different things that can really, be helpful. So let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to show you guys. Um, Git is really helpful in here. I have both of these folders connected to Git repositories, so I could come into here and say Git status, and I can see, oh, I modified my template.html, and I can use this terminal for that. If you're seeing this right here, you can see I have this class workspace right here. I have CS313, CIT160, CS124, and some Python stuff that I have. And what you can do with that is you can say add folder to workspace. It'll just pop open an Explorer window, and I could add a folder to my workspace. And it would show up down here with these other folders. And then I could say save workspace. If I had made a change, I could right click on this. Let's see, right here, save workspace as, and that would save a workspace file that I could actually open. So if I click on open workspace, I don't have very many, I have one, okay, that I just recently made. But this is a workspace file that I could open with Visual Studio Code that would have all of these things saved and ready to rock, okay. So anyways, that's really nice too. If you have like multiple classes, you could open up another window. So I could say new window, and then in here, I could open up its own folder or whatever I wanted to do here. But as soon as I close Visual Studio Code, it will only open up one window. It won't open up both. Okay, which is why I went this route. I had a workspace. I'm like, yeah, I'll just add like multiple directories here, even though they're like completely independent of one another. They're not like the same project, which would be typical for a workspace. But where I can't have like multiple windows opening at the same time, I just put them all in the same workspace. Okay. So yeah, a bunch of different stuff that you guys can do. You'll see here, these colors look a lot like Sublime's colors. I love the Sublime text editor. And so I had these match my Sublime text editor colors. And that's why I have this theme, because when you change the theme, it also changes all the colors of your code. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. So right here is just like a quick reference for Git stuff. If you ever want to debug stuff, um, I can also come into here. Let's see, 124 programs. If I clicked on this one, um, so this is just a simple hello world program in C++. I could actually run this, see that? Just by hitting this play button up here. And that's because I have the C++ um, source code compiler installed on my Windows machine, and I included that in my path variable, my environment path variable. And then I also had that C++ extension downloaded and installed here in Visual Studio Code. And so I could run that extremely easily here as well. Okay. Um, so yeah, a bunch of different stuff that you could do. I would encourage you, like I said a second ago, to Google things, regardless of what class you're doing this for. But this is extremely helpful, and it's a program that you will likely use for many classes, and it's free. You can use it to develop personal projects outside of class. You can use it in professional environments. A lot of larger companies will provide expensive licensed software such as Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, or IntelliJ, or PyCharm, different things like that, which are incredible programs. Okay, but as far as a free program goes, this one is extremely versatile, really easy to use. It might be a little bit of a learning curve as far as like installing extensions go, um, and figuring out how to really streamline that efficiency that you can get to. But it's pretty easy to just pick it up and start going. So, but anyways, I hope that this was helpful as far as you know downloading, installing Visual Studio Code, and just a couple of tips to personalize it for you. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. But I'll look forward to talking with you guys soon.